Good morning.
Morning.
Got 6 people on here. Kind of hurting my feelings.
Hey,
Kind of
chill
like
out.
feel like nobody likes me and wants to come to my mastermind.
We probably overtrained everybody yesterday.
Nah, they'll be here.
That's just it. Why is it all about the ones that aren't here, Tom? What about the ones that are here that think that much of you?
True. Thank you for that perspective, Tony. I
There you
appreciate
go.
it. Yes, I need more of that in my life.
Well, I'm here for the free therapy session.
There it
The
is.
free Thursday therapy with Tom O. I
Hi.
am definitely capable of turning every conversation into a therapy session. Believe me, I got a lot of things I need to work on.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're consulting you. I thought you were consulting
No,
us.
exactly.
We got wealth building Wednesday and therapy Thursday.
Yeah. Only when I'm leading, though.
Paul, how was
And
the
I am-
vacation?
Oh, we had a good time. My daughter graduated from college finally, and now they're going to move back here hopefully in a couple months. So that'll be good. And it was beautiful up there. So,
It's a pretty area, isn't it?
yep. We flew into Jackson. I've never been up that way. So we usually, because she's in Cheyenne, but her school's kind of in the middle of the state. So we ended up flying into Jackson instead of Cheyenne or Denver. So, but it was nice. And now my dog's whining at the door.
So I let my dog out at 6 a.m. this morning. I came back to let him back in at 6:10 a.m. And as he ran past me in the door, I caught that glimpse of something hanging out of his mouth, and he jumped on the couch with a half-eaten rabbit. Yes. So he was very proud of himself, by the way, too. So anyway, all right, let's get started, guys. So here's a list of things I'm prepared to talk about today. Right here. Yeah, nothing on it.
Okay.
All right here. All right here. So, hey, I want to start out a little bit again and just talk about really maybe not about Brent a lot, but I didn't know Brent really all that well. He was very welcoming to me when I came to the market center. And one of the best compliments I can give people is he's easy to be around, right? So you got, those people that are just easy to be around. He was one of those guys, right? But you know what I've been really thinking, and just because I've lost some dear friends over the last couple of years, is Brent didn't wake up that day or whatever the situation was, or go to bed that night and think he was not going to be here the next day, right? So my dear friend John, when he went to the doctor with some stomach pain, didn't realize he was going to get the cancer diagnosis and he wasn't going to be here 7 months later, right? My dear friend Dan, who one day I went in and talked to him and he was acting strangely, and a week later he wasn't the same person anymore, and 7 months later he was dead, right? So none of those people planned on that, kind of when it happened. And so I was listening to, because Brandy turned me on to Ed Milet. I listened to a lot of his podcasts this morning, and kind of the podcast this morning, it said, I didn't even see what it was. It said QTR. QTR, that's what the podcast was going to be about. QTR, quality time remaining. Quality time remaining. So if I ask ourselves, we look what, let's make sure. And he talks about how he's got a group of friends who realize they're at a certain age and life isn't guaranteed. So they have a group chat and they share the wins in their life with each other, right? Because they're celebrating that. So that's really, really great. And then he asked another question, which really was eye-opening for me, because for a long time I've been trying to figure out why am I doing everything that I'm doing? Why am I doing this, right? And he talked about is if you knew you had an expiration date of 5 years, how would you live your life? What would be important to you, right? What would be important? and the bell finally went off. You know what's important to me is to make sure that Carrie, my kids, and my grandkids are left in a good spot, right? And so that kind of answered a little bit of the question for me, because the times in my life, the time in my life that I made the most money, I was the least happy. And I've struggled with that. It wasn't till I did something that purposely that changed somebody else's life for the better that I got satisfaction, right? So I've always kind of struggled with the money thing, right? Okay. At one point, I wanted to make as much money as possible. Then I kind of like, you know what? I just need to make as much money to kind of get what I want, and I'm going to dedicate the rest of that to serving other people and helping the people who are less fortunate than me, the people that didn't get the breaks that I did, or got the bad breaks, or the intellectually disabled, or the domestic violence survivor, or the kid that goes home from school on the weekend and doesn't have food, right? Those things all are the things that fills the God-shaped hole within inside me, right? So, but then that comment right there was, well, wait a minute, the money is important, because in order for me to understand the people that I'm going to leave behind are okay and have a good life, or the chance at a really good life, it's the money that kind of does that, right? So it really kind of got me thinking, and you know, and Brent again is just like, you know what, guys, I'm playing on house money, and I'm going to start living my life, and I'm going to start playing those cards, and I'm going to start playing to win and not to lose, right? So guess what? Tom O's just getting started. And that's what I want you guys to know. So that's what I'm kicking this thing off with. So anyway, thanks for hearing me ramble. The therapy session is over. Y'all good?
I like it.
All right, cool.
Definitely.
So,
Tom, I think you're not the only one that having Brent pass away unexpectedly at such a young age, it's caused all of us to do some self-reflecting on our business and how we've set ourselves up, and are we prepared? And I think it just, when you know somebody that happens to, it just hits a little too close to home. And so, I appreciate you sharing, because I think a lot of us have had those self-reflective moments lately as well.
very good. Cool. Excellent. All right. So I got a couple. I do actually have two little bitty things here on a list. Devon said something in the meeting yesterday that kind of struck home with me. And I kind of like, when I got in the business in 2020, average commission in our office was right around $6,000, right? And now it's over $8,000, right? So basically, I'm now selling the same home for and getting paid $2,000 more in this home that I would have sold 4 years ago, right? So what am I doing to justify my pay raise? Am I still selling that home like I did 4 years ago, or that I'm getting paid $2,000 more on? So Devon kind of mentioned that, a little bit like, we always talk about staying in our lane, but you know what? I kind of feel like we're going to have to start getting out of our lane. We need to stay out of the ditches. But what services are we providing to our clients, right? To justify our thing. Because I tell you what, my last 2 listing conversations, I had to have hard commission conversations around those. I had the last one, I had two agents come in at 2.5%, and here I come in at 3%. How does Tom O justify his other 0.5%? What can I do better, right? So that Devin said, I think we're going to have to start, the service that we provide. I don't know. I feel like we need to step up the game a little bit. Fortunately for me, before I was in real estate, I was around the Bransons for 20 years. I got to watch how Amber took care of her clients, right? I got to see her do those little extra steps that some of us probably aren't doing, going in and taking the necessary, setting up the contractors and do all that. So when I first got into business, it was like, okay, that's standard procedure, and that's kind of what I do. And all of those things help me have that commission conversation. The nonprofits that I'm involved with, one of the things that's really started working for me is, especially if somebody says, okay, yeah, and then we're going to have the big sale. And then I say, what are you going to do with the stuff that's left? And they say, I don't know, I guess we'll donate it. We'll have to figure that out. And I said, what if I could make those donations for you and handle that for you? Because I have all the relationships, right? That's easy for me. I know who takes it and I know when they take it and what they take. So that's one of the things. And once I have that conversation on the last one, we didn't talk about how much my commission was anymore. So does anybody else have any thoughts around that? Because I can keep monologuing all day. I've had 3 cups of coffee. So.
Yeah, Tom, we're in the same boat. I go into every meeting expecting to have to create value and show value at a high level. You know, you're right. You have to expect that if the people are pricing you, even if they're not, they will have an expectation that, you know, maybe a lower commission than what you're offering. You know, we just attack it head on and say, hey, here's what I charge and here's why. I'm well aware there's weaker agents out there willing to work for less. But honestly, what we're selling a different widget here. And then I have to explain to them how our widget is different. And the things you just mentioned, being the solution for all things that come their way. What we do post-contract, you know, that doesn't get talked about enough. But being able to navigate those waters of inspection, and should we need repairs, getting talented people in there at a fair price, all those things, you know, create value for the seller. We have to be able to convey that and get off the 2.5 versus 3 conversation. But it's every business works. You know, if you buy a burger at McDonald's, it's a certain price, and you go into your favorite steakhouse, you can get a burger there too. They sell a shitload of burgers, and they're really expensive. Why is that? Because people see the value in that, you know, $22 burger. So, you know, I think all of us are going to have to get better at that. It's nice when you take a listing, tell them what you charge, sign up here and all that stuff. But those are going to be the exception, not the rule. And when you get those are fantastic. But just be prepared in every way.
Awesome. Paul. Come on, Paul.
I mean, yeah, we can't go in and do the bare minimum and ask for higher commission than the competition. So yeah, I mean, if we do it right, we can get 3.5 or 4% if we really bust our ass and show the value. But you know, that's kind of my goal.
Exactly. Well, again, I feel like, yeah, being, you know, actually, because we talk about bringing our value proposition, but at the end of the day, our value proposition a lot of times sounds like everybody else's, right? So what are those? What is that? You know, what are those things that we can talk about? And again, I know stay in your lane, but if you can help somebody that is, you know, if you can help someone that has something, my wife is distracting me. If you can help someone that is, you know, maybe has some investment properties to sell, but they don't know quite just, you know, they don't know the conversation around what taxes look like. You can't be their accountant, but you can know enough about the situation to advise them and tell them the questions to ask their accountant. So it's just a lot of that kind of stuff. So anybody got anything else on that? All right. So when I first got into business, I heard you guys talking a lot about getting caught in the thing of I'm working in my business and not on my business. And I didn't really grasp that until you kind of get to the point where that starts happening. Where you're getting multiple closings per month or whatever, and then you're trying to provide these extra services, but then you see but then you're not, then you kind of are not doing those things that got you that business, right? And I kind of feel like that's where I'm at in our business, and I'm trying, you know, we're probably going to have to come up with a solution for that at some point too. So I'd be interested to hear what anybody else has to say around that. working in your business and not having the time to work on your business, meaning that I'm so busy handling the jobs that I have, I'm not doing the things that created that business. I think that's a big trap in this, in our industry all around, right? So, yeah.
It's what creates the porpoising of the businesses for almost all of our agents. You know, they get into a nice little heater where they have a month, 2, 3, 4 months of great traction. And then there's usually a big drop off. And it is, whether they want to attribute it to that or not, a portion of it is that. It's just they're working so hard to keep the deals afloat that they have and drag those to the finish line that they just don't have any time to commit. And by the way, they have plenty of time to commit. They're just not organized enough to be able to do it. There's plenty of time. Do the two. Shouldn't take anybody more than 20 minutes a day. But for some reason, people are struggling to find the time to do it. Frustrating.
Yeah, I see that with some friends who are like a plumber friend of mine. He was a newer plumber. He got to where he didn't have time to go out and give estimates because he's working on projects. But if he gets something done and doesn't have any other jobs lined up, he's kind of hosed. So he was balancing that was tough. And then trying to do the books. And, you know, I suck at taking care of my accounting side of my business, you know, terrible at that. But sometimes we can find someone else to help with those things too. And I think we have to remember to know when to ask for help. Or pay
Yeah,
for
but I guess the thing is, you know, is this where we start talking about hiring and assistants? And you know what? No, Lonnie nailed it for me. It's the use of my time. So it's the distraction of, I need to jump up and run over and check on this property when I probably really didn't, but it just makes me kind of feel better that I did it, right? I felt like I was working, but that time could have been used for something else. So I think a lot of that's just, it's a discipline thing. So, you know, that I read this thing one time. It says discipline and devotion lead to abundance. Abundance erodes discipline and devotion. So the discipline and devotion gets us what we want, but once we get what we want, we are not as disciplined and devoted anymore, right? So,
there's a good book by Dan Martell called "Buy Back Your Time," and you know, it's got some really good information in it, and he even has a really good podcast and YouTube series too. But it's Dan Martell, Martell, and it's not all about hiring help, but it is about just really thinking about what's the best use of your time and what's not. Like, should I spend 3 hours mowing my yard yesterday? I don't know. Maybe there was a better use of my time, but you know, things like that. And even changing your own oil or something where you can pay $50 to get it done elsewhere. And there's things like that where we tend to, maybe we need to let go of some of those things and then make more money in that time to justify paying someone else to do that. So, oh yeah, scrolling Netflix. I don't make any money watching Netflix, Jake. So yeah.
Well, if we're being perfectly honest, I've said it a few times. If we could put a monitor on our agents and really figure out a way of how many hours per week do you really put in this business? And I don't care if you're working on it or in it. I think what we find is this is very much a part-time career for even our full-time agents, from a standpoint of the amount of time and effort they put into the business. Now, many of them, that's why they got into this business. Hey, they did the 40 hours a week at wherever, and that's what's attracted them to real estate. But, you know, there's plenty of time there. It's just, are you willing to do it? I cringe when I see somebody doing 5 or 10 transactions a year and they absolutely need a transaction coordinator. You don't need one. You may choose to invest in one, but at the end of the day, you have plenty of time to handle that yourself and learn that yourself. You know, we want this business, and our effort and energy is at this level, and we're getting results that are more similar to the level we deserve.
Part-time work, part-time pay, full-time work, full-time pay. Kind of what they say. So, but, all right. Anybody got anything pressing going on in their business? I got a chat in here. I should look at?
Just real quick, our number one individual agent last year, we were out having a drink talking, and Scott Swagger, and he was just a little bit short, I think, of 500,000. He has an assistant that helps him with some things. He does the rest of it himself, including he has some showing assistants here and there. But at the end of the day, he's putting in 50, 60 hours a week to get that $500,000 business that he wants. Not to mention he has all these other endeavors. But, I had a long talk with him. He told me how much time and energy he puts into this. Brannigan Barnett, another one of our top individual agents, way more than 40 hours a week of applied mental energy into those businesses. So, if we want what they have, sometimes we need to look and see exactly how they're getting it. And usually there's hard work in there somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, one thing having the opportunity to work with Scott for a couple of years, being on the S&P team, and still leaning in on him a whole lot. With all of that being said, he's always been available to take my call and that, and I am fortunate enough to be one of those showing assistants for him. So it's pretty cool. I get to show a lot of $1 million properties and work with doctors and stuff. So it's kind of good. And he treats me pretty well when we do it. So, but yeah, but one of the things, Scott is, Scott, like I kind of talked about earlier, is kind of, Scott's playing to win, right? He's taken some, he's got a big goal in mind in his life, and he's taking all of those steps towards it. And he's pretty focused for a guy who's a little ADD like the rest of us. He's pretty focused on what he wants to accomplish, right? So there's a lot to be learned there. So ankle monitors for agents. Yes. Down with that, Lonnie? We get all ankle monitors, tracking devices on our car, right?
We'll know if they're mowing their own yard and getting their dry cleaning and their car washed every day and all those important, critical aspects of their life.
Exactly.
But they're doing that so they can go show 3 homes tonight.
I like that. Like that.
That's true. I mean, it is true. I guess if I count the time I spend thinking about my business, I'm definitely working full time, right? So, but okay. So you guys I got a situation I would like your all's I'll say opinion on, or your experience, strength, and hope. How's that? So I have a listing in Range Tree Lake. So the listing is an inherited home. The seller, the 3 siblings. I have a daughter who's the home is in probate, and the old man had a reverse mortgage, right? So not a lot of meat left on the bone when we got it, or when they got it. So met with them. There's one. The daughter is kind of she's the one who signs, but one of the brothers is definitely the one in charge of what gets done. And he lives out of town, right? So he lives in Idaho, and he also travels a lot for business. So when we went over there, we had the initial discussion of what will this home bring as is, and what would it bring if we did these certain things, right? And in my opinion, there was quite a bit there from a flipper's perspective. Spend 30 and make 60, right? I felt like was there on this home, and I still think that is really great advice and to go forward. But the problem I'm having now is he's decided that he owns a lot of real estate, and even though he lives out of state, he owns real estate here in Prairie Village and Fairway and stuff like that. He has his own people, right? Well, we came up with a plan. They started painting, and I went over there and I got everything signed, and we came up with a pre-MLS date, and nothing but the pool getting open has happened. And the pool getting open is a big deal, but nothing has really happened. So now we were supposed to go live today, and now I'm extending the pre-MLS into the middle of June, which really isn't that big of a deal. But what has happened over the last, so the coming soon worked in the fact that I had a guy that sold his house in Lake Winnebago and was living with his parents in Raintree, and he was walking his dog and he saw it and he wants to buy it, like as is right now, right? It is. And really there wasn't a whole, I mean, you're in the coming soon status, so I can't show the house to anybody, right? He had another agent that had shown him houses, but he only had agreements to show that 1-day agreement to show houses. So he didn't really have an agent. And then I have another agent who lives in the area who has a client who wants the house really bad. And they threw out yesterday, what if we would, it's a house that we're going to probably go on at 430 after we finish another $20,000+ worth of work. And he's talking about doing a 400,000 sight unseen cash offer, right? Which I'm not really comfortable with, because this is a house that does need to be seen. We're kind of been, you know, the ceilings have been scraped, some of the priming's been done, some of the things have been done. There is some idiosyncrasies about the house that they're not major, but you know, would need to be seen. So I guess the question is, I'm sitting with two people who would probably take the house as is and give my seller probably accomplish their goal. But I don't know. I feel kind of handcuffed by the pre-MLS, and I don't quite know what my next move should be. So I'm going to lean in on some experience here.
Are
Okay.
those people not going to be interested at all if you do the repairs, assuming they eventually get done? Are they no longer interested?
I think they both are. Yes. I don't think the house goes away if I just say, you know what, you'll get to look at it when it's finished like everybody else, kind of a thing. I don't think that they'll go away. The one people we're putting $6,000 worth of cheap carpet in. He'd rather have hard surface, right? So that's kind of what he'd like to catch it before then, right? So that's kind of his strategy. But on one level, the coming soon accomplished exactly what you kind of hoped it does. It's generated interested buyers. But in this particular, in most cases, if the work was completed on time, obviously I'm not even having this conversation. And if I was confident that it was ever going to get completed, we wouldn't have this conversation, right? So I feel like there's an opportunity here. And if I wanted to pursue those two possible cash offer as is opportunities, how would I do that? Would I go ahead and just make the product, the house go live and just let those people and their agents come over and look at it? I mean, as it is, but then I kind of feel like I'm screwed. Or do I just stick with the plan and hope that I'm ready by the 15th of June? And here's the other thing that's came to light. If these folks are willing to give $400,000 at the house in its present condition, then I may not have a $430,000 house. I may have a $440,000 house, right? Because I feel like once I'm feeling better and better about the house and the price all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I think you answered your own question. I think, for the most part, it's in the seller's best interest to expose the house to the masses, not one person or two. And the fact that they may not want all the things that are being done, they'll have to weigh that out when it comes live and decide if it's the house for them. And
Right.
It's not uncommon that somebody goes in a house that somebody replaced carpet and they choose to invest in hardwoods. That's
Right.
just part of owning a house. So
Right.
I think your biggest concern here is, to me, is just that, you've got a seller there's the chance of it actually being ready on the date that they're now telling you is probably pretty slim as well. And, if it got kicked back once, the date, it probably will get kicked back again. Doesn't sound like there's this huge sense of urgency.
Well, there actually should be, because here we got the like I said, we have a reverse mortgage that's costing $3,000 per month. The payoff in this house continually goes up. I kind of had a little bit of a harder conversation with the other day. I said, you're squawking about, spending $6,000 on carpet, but if we would have, kind of like if you would have let me handle this, I would have had it all done by now. You'd be on the market, you'd be done, in your house would be paid off, right? So, but anyway, so, okay. So,
Who else has an opinion on that?
let me just step out for just 1 second, guys. So you guys are going to have to.
I'm in that situation with my listing off of 219th Street. We've had to push the pre-MLS, the going active date a couple of times, and it's a real struggle. So, yeah.
Sometimes with people that can't get it done, um, I've charged them more commission to just let me get it done. Just say, it's been 3-4 times that we've had to push this back. It seems like this is a lot on your plate. Would you like me to handle it? I'll charge you X amount. I can get it handled. Sometimes that's been a solution.
That is a great idea. I will propose that because I didn't want to volunteer my husband and an entire weekend of mowing and using our tractors and everything. So, but if I can make another 0.5%, I'll go do it. But not it's just it's a substantial amount of time and work, and everybody knows yeah, people will take advantage of that if you offer it too freely. So cool. Good idea, Jake. Thank you.
I stole that from Trisha. It's not my idea.
Oh, yeah. I've talked to Trisha about that before. You're so right. Yeah. She does the best video. Her video was great yesterday. Trisha, are you on?
Well,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, she is.
And you can separate the two. Your commission has already been negotiated. You're obviously having a contractor problem to get your house ready to go on the market. Therefore, you can say, look, my husband's pretty busy, but he has the ability to create a bid for us on the things that need to get done. Would you like us to do that? And let's just say that bid's $1,500 or whatever that magic number is. And they may say, you know what, we'll just soon hire him, which essentially is him and you. And then boom, now you set everything in motion. So, but you've got to get paid. I mean, minor things are one thing, but at the end of the day, if these are things they'd have to spend significant money with contractors, if you're going to go out and do it, it needs to be revenue for you.
Thanks, Jake and Shelby, for the shout out.
I actually just recently did that. So I helped a buyer get a house over in Lee Summit. And during the process of being under contract, we got, $30,000 worth of bids of work, 3 different contractors that she wanted done at the house. And she was going to go ahead and get them all done. And at the end, in some cases, there are some language barriers involved. And I told Carrie, I said, I feel like feel like for the next 6 weeks, I'm still going to be working for this client because I feel like if I just dump over these 3 contractors to her, I don't feel like she's kind of equipped to handle it for one thing. So I just called her up and had the conversation of, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's what I'll do. I'll charge you 10% to GC this thing for you and make sure that everything gets done. And I'm betting that I probably will save you at least that much money in miscommunication and overcharges, right? So that's kind of how I handled it because like Carrie said, you're going to be doing it one way or the other. You might as well try to get paid for doing it. And she agreed. And that's what we're doing. So, I think that's one of the other things, I kind of picked up from Devon. I'm sure his business model is a lot like that. So he's, found a way to generate income, not just from selling the house, but going that extra step, like getting out of his lane a little bit. So, but no,
Can you guys hear me?
yeah,
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, I could get it to work earlier. So just what Jake and Shelby were referring to is I have several times had clients who don't have a either the resources, the connections, the energy, whether they're getting divorced, older people, whatever. And I do offer to organize the either donations, the dumpsters, the removal of the stuff, the cleaning crew, and I will take over all that all the way up till the listing. They just walk away, and I charge them 4%. But they also pay the dumpster, all the extras that I get done. Getting somebody to mow the grass the whole time we're on the market. So it's worked for me probably 4 or 5 times. So some people are willing to pay because they see the value in that service.
right. You're,
Differentiates you from others.
Well, and I labor out my children.
There you go.
yeah.
Sweatshop.
Yep, we do that too. All those donations I tell you that I help people get rid of. Yeah, my kids. Here's the pickup truck. Go get them. So,
Same.
yeah. So,
Hey, Tom, could
absolutely.
we talk about something going on in the market real quick?
Absolutely. I'd love it.
So interest rates, the 10-year bond is the bellwether that determines mortgage rates. And it is just broken out to the upside, which is not good, to the upside of a range that it had been in for quite some time. So in most cases, that usually leads us to expecting rates, which are kind of, I don't know if you've looked at like government rates are in the mid to upper 6s, conventionals are straddling upper 6s, low 7s. We can see these go up 25 to 50 basis points here, right as we're, taking off in our busiest time of year. So a couple things is if we're working with buyers, we need to be sure that whatever they qualified for, whatever their comfort level is still the same. So check in with the lender, check current rates, and know that so you're not showing them something that when they finally fall in love with a house, they're going to have payment shock. So just be aware, but in bigger picture wise, the 10-year bond is kind of broken out to the upside. And when that happens, we very often are going to see rates that were higher than what we've seen probably for the last 6 or 9 months.
Wow.
How long does that usually take to
Buzzkill.
show up?
Yeah, there's no set. I mean, it could go. I mean, right now, I think they've already reflected some of that. But the question is, now that it's broken out of a range, how high will the 10-year bond go? Will it go 10 basis points or 50? And at what pace? And what's that look like? Nobody knows the answer there. But it's worthy of knowing that if you've been showing houses and people were getting 6, 6.25 quotes, that might be 6.5, 6 3/4, and that could have drastic, especially a first-time home buyer. That could be they were stretched at 300, now maybe they're stretched at 280.
Something else to consider is with that, even without that, so a lot of the new construction builders like D.R. Horton down here in Peculiar. I know Nanette's done a couple deals or is working with them. They're offering $499 for FHA and VA right now, brand new construction, and I think 5.5 for conventional. That's just for the building they're doing here in Peculiar and Harper and Double Y. But there are some opportunities where they can maybe buy that new home for similar payments to something that's 20 years old. So might be worth checking into if you haven't been by the D.R. Horton place. And they're in Raymore, in the Summit with a little bit higher interest rates. They're pushing the Peculiar homes a little harder right now.
Good to know. What price range, Paul?
Those are like 360 to 4, I think. And they're honestly kind of boxy looking homes on the outside. They're not real attractive as they build them fast, but on the inside they're pretty nice. I was pleasantly surprised when I went inside and looked at them. I drive by them every day, so finally stopped in a couple days ago. And Nanette came in because she's working on one of her deals with somebody down there. So, but they have their own bank. D.R. Horton has their own financial side, so that's part of why they're able to do that. So, but.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and come back to a subject because I just believe this is a conversation we're going to continue to have. Because here I'll tell you the story here. I get my last listing. The lady calls me up and she said, "Yeah, Tom, I went over and bought a home at Prairie View Estates." And I said, "Oh yeah, really? Yeah, and I need you now to help me sell my home." In the conversation, well, who did you use as an agent to buy your new home? She goes, "I didn't. I just walked in there and bought it from the builder." And I said, "Oh, okay." So, and then from that point, I've had two 3-hour listing appointments with her, and each of those, I've spent the first hour talking about all the problems she's having, not having a real estate agent representing her with the new home construction, right? So, but there's really not a whole lot I can do about that. But at the end of about on my second 3-hour listing appointment, about 5 hours in, I think I have everything kind of hashed out. And then she pulls out, "Oh, and by the way, Tom, I've been doing a lot of research and I don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission." Right? So kind of a unique property, in the county, some acreage, earth contact type home. Uh, it, I feel it's worth more to her than it is anybody else. So I was glad that I was prepared for this conversation, but I do want to, but I did learn one more little nugget just having this conversation with Lonnie yesterday. And this particular client loves her comps, right? Loves her comps. And she wants to comp this thing to, story and a half on acreage that aren't earth contact homes, which in a way hers is a creme de la creme of an earth contact, but at the end of the day, it is an earth contact. So she loves her comps, right? And she's sliding all the 500, 550 addresses that she's rent down, and she's really, into this and doing her research. And then I was telling Lonnie about it, and he goes, "Did you tell her that every single one of those comps paid a 3% or not paid a buyer's agent commission? That every comp that you're showing me, those people paid a buyer's agent commission, right?" And that's true. If she's going to show me a comp and we're going to comp it out to this, let's comp it out right. Yeah, they got that much money, and because they paid a buyer's agent commission. So I went back and had that conversation came up again. She was really, "Tom, I guess if I have to, but I want you to fight so I don't have to pay one." So I was able actually to pull that conversation that I had with Lonnie out of my pocket this morning. And I just said, all those comps that we're looking at, all those comps that we're using to justify the price of your home, every single one of those paid a buyer's agent commission. And I think it finally sunk in that might be what we have to do to get this deal done. So
another thing you can do, Tom, obviously, I'm glad you applied that, is you can pull up data that's a little older, more than a year old, or before August of last year, and you could just circle the 3% or 2.5% or whatever it might be, and say, "Here's more data. Although this is dated, these are more really nice acreages, much like your beautiful home. And by the way, you see a pattern here," and you just circle, 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 circle. And if at that point it doesn't set in, then I don't know what else we can do, So there's a lot of little tricks that you can pull out to get people, thinking that way. We had a little gal, she inherited a house, a 250 house, and she's just like, "Hey, I'm willing to pay you. You're worth what you're worth, but I am not paying a buyer agent 3%. I'm paying 1.5%. Okay, you can do whatever you want to do, but just know that every offer that's going to come in, because we handle more sales than anybody in this county, almost every contract you're going to get is going to ask for a concession of 2.5% or 3% to the buyer's agent, no exception, no matter what I tell them. And they may ask for price reductions, they may ask for closing costs, they may ask for firstborn, but just know that's how people are going to do it, and they're going to do it because the buyers don't have the capital to pay their agent themselves. And even if they do, they don't feel it's equitable to do that. And so that worked really well with that particular person.
Yeah. And I think one thing is kind of important to remember though in this conversation, and I'll go back if you were in the ALC meeting and Brandy's map analogy about how, we're all kind of working off of a different map. And a lot of the times, like my particular client, she did the typical Google, if I'm selling my home, do I need to pay a buyer's agent commission? Well, do that. You won't like what it says as an agent, right? You won't like it. And this is the map that a lot of our clients are working off of. They've done their own research that says that they don't have to, right? So again, it's a skilled conversation that I definitely, I guess almost didn't used to be that I really didn't expect to have it. Now I almost expect to have it every single time. So yeah, but anybody else any experience with that?
Yeah, no, I had one very similar, and it was the same thing on all the comps. I said, all these pay the buyer agency fee. I said, do we want to pay that buyer agency fee, or do we want to cut the price? So we can't. And then I think Lonnie said, you can't save, both sides can't save the same 3% or whatever it was that they were trying to say. And that kind of stuck with them. And I tried to teamify it. I said, hey, if we get multiple offers, maybe we can negotiate and do something at that point. But let's just see what comes in, but expect most of them to come in with a 3% buyer agency fee.
Right.
But yeah, I just had that a couple weeks ago.
And I just always put it on the net proceeds. And I spend most of the conversation pointing to that net proceeds number, right? To get them to wrap their head around that number. And then off of all the other numbers, because in the end, that's the number that should matter to them, right? Is that number good enough, right? Is that net proceeds number meet your expectations, right? And if we can kind of get them agree on that, the commission conversation again kind of goes away. So.
Yeah, we tend to throw extra stuff on that initial net proceeds sheet, like warranty and maybe closing cost. And then if those don't come up in the contract that you accept, then you all of a sudden they're making more money. That way you kind of show them worst case scenario instead of, showing them all the pretty side with leaving out some of that stuff where they might have the opposite effect later on. But
I guess another conversation, because there's been a lot of lessons to learn with this particular client, and kind of get your guys' opinion on this. This house needs a roof, right? I've already had a roofer over there. We have the estimate in our back pocket. She doesn't want to put the roof on it just in case she can get a deal without having to put a roof on it, right? But in my professional advice is the house is the roof would get the house sold closer to the price that you want and get us closer to the net proceeds that you're expecting, right? But I can't argue with her that if somebody could slide in and say, I'll take the house as is. We could get multiple people interested and get people to not, take the roof out of the equation. I can't argue with her. That could happen, right? But, how do you kind of handle that conversation when there's an update that probably really needs to be done on the house? And the way that I kind of handled it is, we've kind of decided on a price where she's willing to talk about the roof if she can get it, right? Opposed to the as-is price where she's just definitely not doing anything with the roof. Well, that's kind of the strategy that I've gone through with the back pocket. And on my latest net proceeds with the high number that she wants, I went ahead and put the cost of the roof on there so she could show. I said, I think a roof's going to come into play if we're going to get this number. So kind of how I went with it. But I know Lonnie talked, I got a good relationship with a roofer who's worked with a lot of agents in our office, and he's familiar with CoFel, and he's willing to get paid out of closing. I guess another question I have is I always feel like my sellers are more comfortable doing a roof post closing than pre-closing. What is the downside of that? The money's held in escrow for the roof or whatever to get done after closing. What is the downside to that?
The only downside is you could have a situation where the roof doesn't get done properly and the buyer already owns the house. and they're dealing with the mess versus if it's done while the seller still owns it, the buyer has an opportunity to inspect the new roof and things like that. But those are rare occasions. We did have one of those occasions that we're dealing with now. But at the end of the day, if the buyer, what they should care about is they're getting a roof. And if they say, well, my insurance company says it has to be on before closing, that's a bunch of crap. They can write the insurance and give them 30 days to install a new roof, or whatever, 60 days, whatever the magic number is. So it's just a matter of communicating.
On your first question on if she should replace the roof before you go to market or not. I mean, if the 85% of the people are going to require a roof, and you're really hoping that maybe that 10 or 15% of people won't, you might as well get all the benefits of marketing a property with a brand new roof on it.
I feel
Versus
like
trying to just shoot that little 10% of the market.
right.
And
Yeah.
make for sure that it is actually covered before you close. Right, Jake?
Yeah. Yeah, that's different conversation. Shut up, Rusty.
Love you.
Anybody got anything else to wrap up this last few minutes with? Got 8 minutes.
Can we go into a scenario of what that would look like if you go under contract, the roof is bad, and how the listing agent and buyer's agent work together on that situation?
Can I give that to you from a contractor point of view?
Yes, please.
I typically like to have a conference call between both agents to discuss the plan of action and how this works. And, if everyone's in agreement between the two agents, obviously they have that conversation prior. And if they're in agreement, we just work together as a team to make for sure everyone understands all the steps, how this is going to work, what needs to go to the lender, what doesn't need to go to the lender, all those things. Damn it, these are being recorded, aren't they? Okay, sorry. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I don't role play. Someone else can role play with you on that one, but that's kind of how I think the professional way to handle it is having the conversation between, all parties, sometimes even the buyer, the sellers, including them in on this too, makes them kind of feel warm and fuzzy, making sure everyone's going to get it taken care of. So.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So definitely take out the chance for miscommunication. So. Shelby, I would say I had a listing, kind of goes back to the roof over on Red Top in Meadowwood. And this was a particular case where we had an 89-year-old seller who had moved to a nursing home, right? And so we did have an original roof on a 21-year-old house, an original HVAC. So, that's kind of how I marketed the property, as a well-maintained home being sold as is. And then not shying away from the conversation around those two items yep, we priced the house taking in consideration that somebody may need a roof. What I can tell you as of right now, the roof is not leaking. Yes, the price is in consideration that we have a 20-year-old HVAC, but as of right now, the house is heating and cooling as it's expected to. So when your buyers bring us an offer, this is, we've kind of taken in consideration on all that when we priced the house. And I did it. I went under contract the first time, and I thought we were crystal clear. And then they did inspections, and then the roof and the HVAC conversation came up again, and I ended up not holding that one together. Put it back under. Was a little bit discouraged, put it back under contract, and had it under contract again in about 3 days. I got it back together at the same price, and the conversation held. We didn't do anything with the roof or HVAC and got our price. So, you know, our job is interesting, right? Because nothing that we do is, you know, everything is different and every strategy is different. And we go in and we advise people to spend money or not spend money, and hoping that we're making the right decision and they get the return on the investment that we think that they will. But like Rusty and I were talking about the other day, you know, you go in and advise that client, hey, we need you to do this, this, and that, and they end up spending 25 grand, and you tell them you're going to get that number, that this is the number we'll get, and you sit there and pray that you get that number, right? Because none of us have a crystal ball and we don't know for sure. But we do stick our necks out for our clients to maximize their returns, right? And it's definitely something I learn a little bit more about through each transaction that we do.
I also want to add, just because I'm in this current situation, if you guys do the proceeds and working with contractors that do that at closing, please, for God's sakes, make for sure that on that CD, you have a line item for your contractor. It's very, very important because it's what you're going to do to protect them.
Very good. All right, we got anything else, or am I going to let class out early?
Kind of like a Friday. Let's go.
Like, it's Friday, but it's Thursday. It's a Thursday, but it's like a Friday.
Yeah.
Last day of school.
All right, everybody have a great long weekend.
Hi,
We'll see
everybody.
ya.
Great
Have a good
call.
day.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.